It's good to be here with you guys and gals. My name is Kim Sawyer. I'm an executive coach, professional speaker, and business facilitator, and I've been working out of the Houston area for 20 years doing that in specific. I got into coaching early on after selling my first business. And then when my second larger effort to start a business went down with two big skyscrapers in New York City, and my Series A ran and hid, which gave me the opportunity to find the thing that I've loved doing more than anything in my life. So the lesson I learned then, which became extremely valuable when the pandemic hit, was most of the most powerfully valuable things that I have in my life today came from when something went wrong. Something I thought was a failure occurred. And that's been a tremendous paradigm shift for me on how to respond when things go wrong. I actually give a talk that I've developed since the pandemic called Thrive, how to come out on top when things go wrong. And maybe I'll come back my next opportunity, Brian, and share that with y'all. So goodness gracious, where to start? First of all, I've been a friend of Fang for a long time. And probably since just a few years after I began my coaching career and realized speaking was going to be a great way to attract business. And Andrew Jowett and the Galleria Fang used to have me come once a year and speak. That was probably 15 years ago. And then I met Brian, and I've been coming to the Woodlands for maybe 8 to 10 years, speaking there as well. And I've had a couple opportunities to speak at FEI and some of their lunch and learns, and that's been great as well. So a lot of my clients are controllers, treasurers, CFOs, and financial executives over the years. So I'm a friend of the function. About that. So this is a small group, and that's perfect for me because as a coach, the large majority of my work is with individuals and small groups and teams. So this is great. I prefer this to the big webinar format. And it's nice to be face-to-face really with people. You know, nowadays face-to-face means something different than it once did. We've had to differentiate between face-to-face and in-person, which is a whole different thing. And so, you know, the way we relate to each other is diversifying. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it gives us more options, and each option fits certain purposes if we use them in the right way, just like every other form of communication. So I'm going to really encourage you all to ask questions, to share your thoughts, to challenge things that I might say. And I'm going to offer opportunities along the way for a pause to invite you to speak. I'm really comfortable with silence. So most of the time, the price of admission to the next piece of content is somebody saying something. So keep that in mind so you can help each other hear everything I have to say by participating. Now, I work from paradigms rather than tools, techniques, behaviors. I find that the right thing to do always becomes apparent when I'm looking at something from a paradigm that serves my purpose. And so over the years, the name of my business, which I came up with 20 years ago, has actually evolved into a full paradigm that integrates everything I do in my coaching. And I never knew that when I came up with the name, except in some intuitive level. But I have totally redefined what wealth means and how to use that concept as a way of living life effectively and prosperously in every area. I find that the systems and concepts we've developed in order to optimize financial wealth are brilliant. And we've developed all of those because we think money's so important. However, what if I applied that same way of looking at things to anything I value in any area of my life? Why wouldn't I want to optimize my assets in every area of my life using those tools? And that's really what I do these days. I come from what I call a wealth mindset or wealth consciousness. And then I derive everything else I do from that. And you'll see how that works here in social capital. I am going to really quickly here. Hold on. I'm going to set myself a timer. Good. So wealth, my belief is the purpose of all of our lives is to be as wealthy as possible on our last breath. Bottom line. But what does that mean? It certainly means far more than having many financial assets. I define wealth as the accumulation of all of the assets I have in my life at any given time. And I define an asset as anything I care about, anything I have decided will make my life better. It could be tangible or intangible. It could be spirituality, could be health, could be legacy, could be relationships, could be love and family. It could be fun, any of those things, and certainly can be money. And it certainly can be success in my career or in my business. Whatever I have identified as something that will make any area of my life better or help me achieve my objectives is an asset. And so my goal is to acquire and create as many assets as I can. Simple as that. And so what that means, in order to adopt that paradigm, is I have to redefine my role in life. Matter of fact, all paradigms come from a redefinition of my role in relation to something. And in this case, the new role is investor. I am an investor in life. Every minute I make an investment decision, whether I realize it or not. I'm spending things with every moment of my life, consciously or not. But hopefully, I'm making decisions to invest my resources, and I'll talk about that in a minute, in the options I have available to me that will create greatest value, that will create the greatest number of assets, that will move me forward most toward the things I care about. And so if I can go about living life that way, what am I doing right now? And amongst my options, is this the thing that will accomplish the most good in my life? Then I automatically get wealthier all the time. It's inherent in the way of thinking and acting. So as in anything, if I want to acquire assets, I have to have currencies to spend. Money is a currency. It's something I have that I can exchange for other things that I care about more than the money. But I have other currencies as a human being. The one we think about the most is time. We spend time all the time. And occasionally we're aware of that. We have calendars and we make appointments with people. And some of us who are a little bit more intentional make appointments with activities and things that are important in our lives. Something I have my clients do a lot, because making an appointment with something in my calendar is like writing a check in time. Until I'm actually willing to put an hour towards something I care about or something I want to do, it's just words. Just like looking at a wonderful investment and then never writing a check. So we have time. We have to make decisions on how to spend it, and there's always options for our limited time. In addition to time, we have what I think is maybe our most important asset or our most important currency to spend, and that is attention. The phrase pay attention evolved in our language for a reason, except very few of us take that literally. What I think about next is probably the single most important investment decision I have to make in my life all the time. Because until I focus my awareness on something, I can do nothing else with regard to it. I can spend none of my other resources towards something. First, I have to focus on it. And there's a whole huge skill set to be developed around mastering what I'm paying attention to. That's often another area of my coaching with people, is how to keep my attention from being hijacked by things in me and around me that aren't what I'm choosing, and how to regain that choice and focus on what I choose. We also have energy as another asset, There's a great book out there called The Power of Full Engagement, and it's about managing energy, not time. So we have different forms of energy, and if I don't have the type of energy and the amount of energy I need for any given activity, then what's the point of spending an hour on it? Because I can't really make the most of that hour. Physical energy, spiritual energy, emotional energy, and intellectual energy. So there's a whole process of managing, renewing, and spending and predicting and allocating energy. Investment decisions. Am I spending my time, my attention, my energy on what's most valuable amongst my options? Then we obviously have money for investing in the material components that we need to accomplish any of those other things. But there's another form of currency that we rarely think about, and that is relationship. We have the ability to only spend a certain amount of our effort in building and maintaining relationships. There's only so much we can put into our relationships with people. However, if I am already, and this is a challenge in itself, using my time, attention, money, and energy in the optimal way from amongst my options, I am operating at maximum individual performance. I am creating the most value as I define it as is possible for me as an individual. And no matter how effective and no matter how brilliant and no matter how capable I am, that's always limited. And compared to what's possible to accomplish, it's extremely limited. Because those people who accomplish amazing things don't do so on their own. As long as I'm ensuring that I'm operating at my own individual optimal performance, then everything else I want to do has to be done through other people, which is going to always be the largest component of what I can create in my life in every area. My ability to identify relationships with the right people and how much to put into that relationship and how to focus and structure that relationship so that it works as well as can work will be the basis upon which I can build more in my life that I care about. And so we take this very much for granted, just like we do most of our currencies except money and maybe time. We just have interactions with people as they come, as they go, as they show up in our lives. Sometimes we have many interactions with a person over a long period of time, and we build up psychological connections and memories, shared memories and history. We call that a relationship. But it's not really a relationship. It's just a series of interactions I have with people. It's very transactional. It's what networking is, a transactional set of interactions with people in order to achieve some agenda. Nothing wrong with networking, but if I'm going to spend time interacting with people, what a minimization of what's possible in those interactions. Because at best, I achieve my agenda. Done deal. So I'm going to propose a very different way of looking at relationships that I call social capital. I'm going to pause for a minute and open the floor for questions or comments. You can raise your hand or you can just unmute and share. We're a very tidy little group here, so I think that'll be manageable.
Kim, have you found as you've worked with people that there are any particular difficulties in sort of changing to this point of view or paradigm, making that paradigm shift to really, because it really sounds like it's a way of thinking. It's a way of digesting what's important and how do I invest in it?
Yeah.
And how do I manage it? So are there some things that as people try to get there that you find like, oh, these are kind of some common stumbling blocks that people just have troubles figuring out?
So there's quite a few, actually, because the whole undertaking is relatively alien in our lives. We very, very rarely hear about the idea of wealth thinking being applied to anything outside money. Matter of fact, there's immediate resistance to that automatically because that's mercenary, and money's not altogether a good thing in most of our minds. It's not, we're taught in many parts of our society that money is at best a necessary evil, and we do what we can to get it, but then we really go live our lives where all the important stuff is. And there's a part of that that's true, but the fact of the matter is, when we talk about, and I raise the topic of thinking about other parts of life like I think about money, people immediately go, no, that's so mercenary, that's so whatever it is. And so getting past that fundamental paradigm, often unconscious, is one of the first ones. Secondly, beginning to rescue a little bit of currency, especially in the area of time in the beginning, is the first step. And with most of my executives and entrepreneurs, they keep themselves so busy and often very unconsciously with regard to what fills their time that they don't have any time to think about how they think, or to practice new behaviors, or build new systems into the way they operate. So the first thing we end up doing in most cases with type A, very successful people, is to learn to carve out some ownership of their time, some choice in what they do with their time. From there, we have a little bit to work with, because now we can spend time looking at things like, how do I go about living my life more effectively? Usually attention is the next major block, because people are not conscious most of the time of where they're spending their attention, of what they're focusing on. Have you ever noticed that you can be at work sometimes and suddenly look up and 3 hours has gone by and you don't actually remember any decisions you made along the way about what you were doing? That's what happens. I was being governed in that time by whatever happened around me or whatever I was feeling and thinking inside, which is oftentimes automated, to do whatever the next thing was, rather than sitting back at any point and going, okay, that's complete. Now here are the things I might do next. What's the most valuable thing from amongst my list? And now I'm going to spend this much time on it, and then doing that. Okay. That's the kind of thinking that becomes necessary. And honestly, that's a mental muscle. It's something that has to be developed like any strength. And it'll become exhausting at first, learning how to notice what I'm paying attention to and then change deliberately what I'm paying attention to. So these are things that we build as practices into the lives of my clients so they can begin to get better at that. So these are all building blocks that go along the way, and all the rest of the things that happen in coaching, from time management all the way to relationship management and leadership, which is a form of relationship, are part of that process. So I'm going to go forward now, but I just presented to you all a huge concept and what it can mean for you in living in your lives. And it's a challenge to take it on because it takes time and effort and work. It's almost a second career, living life profitably, because that's what I'm talking about. But we don't spend any time on living life profitably. And so now we have to do that. And what more important thing is there to focus that kind of skill and attention on than our lives as a whole? We do that in our jobs and our professions, but why is that more important than my entire life? So I'm going to leave you with that. I'm going to go back to relationships. Okay. So a relationship is time and energy and attention that I spend with a person that I have selected. And that interaction can create for both of us things that are of value to us, and hopefully things that are more valuable than the resources we're investing in our relationship. But that really requires consciousness, intention, decision-making, and agreements. Because at the end of the day, that is the definition of a relationship. It's an agreement. It's not just hanging around each other and doing stuff together. A relationship is two people making an agreement to have a relationship. It becomes a third thing within which all the interactions take place. And they will take place better if the relationship has been established by two people or even a team looking each other in the eye and say, we agree to have a relationship together that's going to persist, and we will take care of that relationship. So this whole notion of explicit agreements is a very powerful coaching tool that I use with my clients. Instead of just rolling along with implicit agreements and assumptions until something goes wrong, how about sitting down in the beginning with somebody that I want to be in a relationship with and say, okay, this is what I'd like to do together. Are you willing to do that? Yes, I am. Boom, something just happened. A powerful bond between two people based on attention, mutual intention, mutual respect, and bond of agreement has just been created. And both people are now going to be much more willing to invest and abide by behaviors that will protect that relationship. So I'm building relationships with people. The next agreement that's part of that is, what's our purpose? Every relationship has a primary purpose. Some relationships have multiple purposes, but I look at each of those as a different relationship, because I will take off the hat of a business colleague and put on the hat of a friend. And each of those relationships is very different. I won't have both with all people, but I might with some. And creating each relationship with a different set of agreements with that person allows that friendship to flourish and the business relationship to flourish without them getting in each other's way. Intention, explicit agreement. So then once we defined our purpose together, we make other agreements on how we're going to treat each other, commitments we're going to make, ground rules we're going to follow, so that that purpose can be furthered. And once that's created, there's what I call a container within which people can operate together from now on with the transactions and interactions they want to deal with day to day. But those will happen much better within that. We're anticipating possible disagreements and breakouts before they happen, breakdowns before they happen. Because once a breakdown or a conflict happens, that's the worst time to figure out a better way to interact with each other. So even an agreement such as, if either one of us gets upset by something the other person does or says, we commit to come to one another and talk it through before we jump to conclusions or leave the relationship. And if that's made in the beginning, there's this awesome accountability in the future. Now, this whole process is powerful with employees. In order to establish that from the beginning, with new clients, with friends, with vendors, not just written agreements on paper that get signed around the tangible and actionable parts of the relationship, but the parts that are most important, which is, who are we to each other and how are we going to agree to do business together? So what I'm proposing is that each of us step back, and I'm going to focus on the area of business and career, because our careers are much bigger than our jobs or even current business enterprise, and look at the people that are available to us and to build relationship with, and the people we may already have relationships with, and begin to evaluate each of those people based on what purposes might be involved in relationships with that person, how likely to create maximum value for each other is it, and then therefore, how much am I going to invest in that relationship? And that makes each relationship an asset, a capital asset, not just an asset. A relationship is something I might have and it returns some kind of benefit, just like any asset. If I have an asset, I use it and I get the thing that might come from it. But a capital asset, as we all know in finance, is a very different thing than an asset simply. And a capital asset is an asset whose purpose is to have babies. A capital asset is an asset who serves our ability to create assets better. And there's many things we can think of as capital assets. Certainly in business, it's very clear. but in other areas of our lives, new knowledge, new skills, dedicating time to other activities, strategies. All of those are capital assets that we create so that we can create assets better. Building time management processes so that we can create more assets with the time we spend. Those are capital assets. Relationships, if I approach them that way, that's the critical point. If I approach them that way, can be capital assets that I have a long-term relationship with, mutually, to create value for one another. A relationship can be a capital asset when the two of us agree to come together and for the long term, try to find ways we can help each other as much as possible. And what happens, the difference between networking and social capital development is that networking, we have a very clear goal in mind, or one or two goals. So we interact with each other to try to achieve those goals. With social capital, the relationship is its own value, because many times we can't even foresee the most valuable ways we might be able to help each other in the future, because we don't know the future. And we're both going to be continually changing, meeting new people, evolving, getting new knowledge. So as time goes on and we continue to interact, new and more wonderful ways that we couldn't have previously thought of can emerge. So ultimately, that long-term relationship with a purpose of mutual benefit is much more valuable than any networking relationship. And that's what I'm going to encourage you all to do. Now, networking is fine, but why not take those networking relationships, if I'm going to build them anyway, and expand them into social capital assets? It's just a matter of putting a little bit different effort around it, making a different set of agreements with that person, and then taking care of the asset long term. Because all capital assets only create the value that's possible if we continue to take appropriate care of them over the life of the asset, correct? Buying a truck and driving it till it dies, kind of networking. Buying a truck and taking optimal care of it doubles, triples, quadruples its life, and therefore the money it can make us. I propose looking at relationships the same way. So I'm going to pause there and open the floor to questions. I'm not looking at chat, by the way, so I'm asking y'all to speak to me and each other. Remember the price of admission. I got good stuff still to come. I can't believe a group of successful professionals, this doesn't mean anything to you, and you can't see how it might apply to your life or have a question about that.
Hey, Kim, this is Victor.
Hi, Victor.
So obviously it takes two to tango, right? Like, to be in a relationship, we both have to be on the same page. So, let's just say I perceive somebody, that we could have a mutually beneficial relationship going forward. How do we, I guess my point is that how do we, make sure that we feel the same way? I mean, I think there's still feeling, to get to that point where we actually sit down and say, to have this, handshake or saying on the road, it seems that we have to, at least establish something, a connection even prior to that to be, decide to go deeper.
Yeah. So Victor, good question. And I'm going to go in a minute to an example that I think will bring that out. But the bottom line is we approach it like we would approach it in business, doing a contract, two people deciding to do business together. two companies deciding to do business together, a joint venture, a strategic alliance. Okay. We understand those and we have meetings together and we talk about our different interests and goals. And then we decide if we think those interests and goals will be furthered enough for both of us to engage in some formal kind of relationship. And then we start exploring, doing due diligence, negotiating, and we come up with terms that work. And we make agreements about those. And then we go forward and have that relationship together, that alliance, that vendor relationships, that employment relationship based on those agreements. I'm going to suggest basically the same process, but verbally with oral agreements in the realm of social capital. Does that in theory answer your question, Victor?
Yeah, I think it does. I think it's almost like yeah.
It's just literally taking this concept that none of us would think of not following in the realm of business and taking it and transferring it over to the realm of any relationship, including friendship,
right,
or marriage, or somebody I do have a common interest with or an interest group. How many groups get together and never really sit down with one another and decide, here's why we're here. Here's how we're going to interact. Here's when we're going to interact. Here's how we're going to communicate. Here's how we're going to be successful as a group, even if the goal is just playing golf together on a regular basis. Okay, so I'm going to go there. Anything else before I move on?
I have a question, Kim. So how do you handle a relationship that you realize, this is one I could really build social capital through. However, the chemistry isn't there, or there's just something that is irritable.
Yes. Okay. Excellent point. And that's a good place to go before I go into the example. So I don't have to have a whole relationship with a whole person in every relationship I decide to have. I can pick that part of a person or what they're up to that I want to build a relationship with because of the purpose. And then the rest of it's not relevant as long as we can make agreements to stick with our purpose and not go into areas outside that. So I might have something I don't like in a person. They may be doing something in some area of their life I don't agree with. Their politics may be extremely different than mine. We may just have an odd personality mismatch. However, it doesn't have to be a 1-0 decision. I got to dive in there and have a relationship with all of this in order just to accomplish that, or I wipe the whole thing off. Can't do it. They irritate me. Okay. How does that benefit anybody? So that's part of the skill at learning to set a relationship with somebody with boundaries built around it, so that I'm not putting more time and more effort, emotionally or otherwise, into that relationship than is justified by the value it can create. And learning to think about relationships that way in itself is a challenging shift. And the reason we do explicit agreements is we can make agreements around that, putting boundaries around the relationship so that it's not me just trying to manage it, but we've already decided that together. And if somebody steps outside the bounds, all we need to do and say, remember that agreement we made about keeping politics out of our business relationship. Oh yeah, I remember that. Self-adjust. Okay. Does that answer your question, Heidi? Now that requires some emotional intelligence. It requires me being willing to feel the discomfort of whatever it is about them that gets triggered inside. Just take a breath and let that go by, and then reorient my attention. Remember that reaction inside, that emotional disturbance because I don't like their politics and they said something, is a distraction that happens in me and it grabs my attention. And if I let it stay there, I've lost the game and I have to get away because it's too uncomfortable. But if I can just notice that and go, you know what, not relevant. Okay, I'm going to take my attention back and I'm going to put it back on why we're here. Okay. All right, I'm gonna move on. So what I want to do is this is the approach that I usually start with my clients because it's simple, it's structured, it's step by step, and it starts with the relationships we've already built, or not relationships, but people we already know and have interacted with. And it's a way to go through that process and come to understand the process with those people before we start trying to build it out with people we haven't met yet, because that's the next phase of development outward. But if you all remember, one of the fundamental marketing principles in business is don't waste money trying to find new clients unless you're optimizing the existing clients you have. If I'm not getting all the business I might get from every existing and past client and all the referrals I might get, don't waste time going out and finding leads for new business, because it's much easier and less expensive to get business from people who already value me and know me. Okay, it's the same in any social capital. So here's a project I'm going to give you, and I'm going to, I'm going to encourage you to try it, and then maybe build a discipline from now on through the rest of your career of doing this. And when people come to me saying they want to search for a job, I say, before you do any of that other stuff, resumes and recruiters and online applications and LinkedIn, start doing this first, which is going beyond networking and systematically building social capital relationships with people you already know, where we're going to try to help each other. And you will find that not only do you get lifelong value far beyond your next job, but it's also the best way to find your next job. So as best you can, get all of your contacts into Outlook or some other fairly robust database. Outlook will let an individual person do almost everything necessary to manage relationships. But many of the other contact managers, like, the one you find in iPhone or Android or Google, don't have the functionalities and the robustness to be able to do this. So if you've got most of your contacts set up in Outlook, there's a feature that y'all probably familiar with where you can export them into an Excel spreadsheet. So you go to File and Export, and then you select Excel spreadsheet. You're going to select your contacts as the source file, Excel spreadsheet as the destination file. And then it'll let you pick the fields from each contact that you want to put into the spreadsheet. So you only want to select name, company, and title. So you'll have 3 columns in your spreadsheet: name, company, title. And all of your contacts for whom you have that information will appear in that list. Questions so far? Give me a nod if you're on board with me. Okay. All right. So now you're going to take the time. And by the way, that means we got to pick some time, block it out an hour or so, maybe every week or two. And if you're looking for a job, more time sooner, to go through the process I'm going to outline. Once you set it up front, like anything of value, any asset, you front load the effort you put into it so it delivers value with least effort in the future. By the way, that's leadership. You front load your time and effort in building a certain kind of quality relationship with somebody so that after that, they will voluntarily cooperate with you with the minimum of ongoing effort to control them. That's leadership in its essence, but that's a whole nother conversation. Now, you're going to go through and evaluate these contacts. Okay, we're evaluating prospective assets like any investor would. What are the various investments I can make for my portfolio? Life is a portfolio, by the way, a portfolio of assets in each life area. Each life area is an account that I'm populating with maximum assets. But back to business relationships, we have to evaluate before we decide if or how much to invest, right? Simple, right? I'm going to invest different amounts in each thing, and I'm not going to invest in other things at all. It's the same way of thinking. The first criterion of evaluation is willingness. On a scale of 1 to 10 for each relationship, how willing are they to do something to help you? Based on the warmth, the past interactions y'all have had, how willing would they be to spend time with you and go a little bit out of their way to do something to help you? 1 means they've got no reason to do anything. It's totally arm's length. 10 means we've really made a difference in each other's lives. We connect personally and in business. They're going to go out of their way to help me. And you'll score each one in column 4 on willingness. The next criterion is ability. How able are they to help you? It's a very broad and subjective score, but you will have a gut feeling of, based on who they know, who they are, what their position is, what their industry is, how many folks they know, what knowledge they have, how success bound are they? How likely is it that they might be able to do something sometime that's of value for you? Not just specific, not just the next job, but over their career and your career, how likely is it that they would be able to do something of value for you? Introduce you to somebody, offer you some ideas, know of another position. 1 to 10. Criterion 3, your ability to help them. Same question. How likely do you imagine you could help them in some way? By the way, I will say that just you going through the process that I'm going to describe with them, just introducing this concept so they can experience the way you're approaching this relationship, and the fact that you're doing this as an undertaking will deliver to them maybe something that may be of greatest value to them when they think, wow, I've never thought of this that way. I could do this with other people. Just that. Okay. Now, if you're in job search mode, obviously you're looking for quicker results, and you're going to focus your effort or your evaluation more on willingness and ability to help you. So weight those by 2. Normally, everybody's equally, all 3 are equally weighted if it's just part of your ongoing career development. And by the way, employed or not, don't ever stop doing this, because you building relationships based on your estimate of willingness to help, ability to help, and your ability to reciprocate is going to be something to do from now on. And it will create more value for you in your career than doing a great job for your current employer, having a great relationship with your boss, staying in touch with recruiters, updating your resume, getting involved in networking groups and professional associations. All those are great. But this one undertaking, if you just spend a couple of calls and maybe 1 meeting a week with somebody, will do far more for you over the life of your career than any other thing you might do. So at the end of the day, you're going to have a total, the final column, okay? Willingness and ability to help you times 2, your ability to help them times 1. So the total score can be 50 if somebody rocks it on all counts. Okay. Then you take your spreadsheet and you sort in descending order based on the total. See where I'm going with this? And you now have a quantitative measure of prospective value of that relationship. Now, you haven't seen these people in a long time. You're estimating, just like you are with an investment in a company that you haven't done deep due diligence with, but you're deciding whether even to go do due diligence. Okay. But you have a numeric score that at least tells you from the beginning where to start, with whom to start, and what time to spend with them. So you now have a piece of gold. You now have a gold making machine. If you stop and think about it, you've got this list of people that know you, that you've interacted with in some form. And by the way, I will say who's in your contacts is relevant. I don't take every business card I get and throw it in my contacts. If I have not done business with somebody, or at least scheduled a meeting and kept it, both of us kept it together, they don't go into my contacts. So if I get a card and I think this person is worth meeting, and we schedule a meeting and we have a meeting, they go into my contacts. So ultimately how you manicure and create and filter the people who are in your contacts will be important to this, but you can start with where you're at. Questions?
Kim, this is Jeff. Sorry to make you do this, but I think I got lost on the scoring. Could you just kind of recap how you're getting to a max of 50?
Okay. So you're scoring willingness to help.
Mm-hmm.
You're scoring their ability to help you and your ability to help them. Now, in a normal case, when you're not looking for a job or something in particular, you are going to have them all evenly scored and the max is 30. But if you are looking for a job or some more specific short-term outcome, then you're going to care more about their willingness and ability to help you. So you weight each of those by a factor of 2. So you're doubling the score on willingness, doubling the score on ability to help you, leaving your ability to help them times 1. Basic financial calculation. Y'all know how to work with spreadsheets. The thing of it is, we can't wrap our brain around what we do with money. That mastery at Excel spreadsheets is just the same set of skills we're using here. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. And I would add, my business is networking. So I have a lot of tools to organize, dissect, different skills and so forth and pull them up when I need them. But this would really add a whole piece to the puzzle for me, just professionally and personally. So I appreciate this.
And by the way, whether you are an employed executive who plans to follow a career path of that, or whether you own your own business, doesn't matter. If you have any kind of career at all, you have a wealth of relationships that you're not doing anything with right now. It's like gold sitting on the table and you walk by it every day and you don't even pick up a piece of it from time to time. It costs nothing. And the amount you will get from a small investment of time and effort is huge. So, and then we're not even getting to the part yet of going about and prospecting for select future relationships with people you don't know. And I have a very powerful tool and process and strategy I've built within LinkedIn to do that. And by the way, this is a lot. It's a lot of things to think about, skills to develop, and tools to build in place. I'm in the very beginning processes of building a coaching group around this, where I'll be taking 6 months with a group of people, and we'll meet once a month in a group coaching session. And this will happen piece by piece by piece in a group setting. So by the end of 6 months, you've got it all going. External social capital, internal social capital within your current company, and also building future social capital with people you don't know. So I'll say more about that at the end of the talk. Speaking of which, good. All right. So here's what you do with this wonderful, rich set of information. You're going to start at the top of the list with the highest scores, obviously. And you're going to spend some really focused time and energy on each of those relationships. Typically, let's just say you're just in an unweighted score of 30 mode. Okay. You will probably take everyone for sure that rates 25 to 30 as a final score. Those are your prime golden prospective relationships. Now you could go down after a while once you've done all those, into 24 or 23. But when you get down to close to 20 or below, those are people you might just want to invite to LinkedIn or send an email to. And when you get down below that, there's some of them you just leave alone, because remember, we are oftentimes investing time interacting with people where there isn't enough value to justify it. And sometimes that's true of friends. And it's very often true in business. And we have various reasons, sometimes nothing more than a habit, because we once found value in that interaction, but we don't anymore, but we're in the habit of it nonetheless. So this is also about letting go of assets who have run their course. Sooner or later, you have to replace the truck in most cases, okay? Now, this is what I'm going to encourage you to do. You pick the one name near the top of your list where ability to help is a little lower, but willingness to help and your ability to help them is higher. Okay. We're wanting to go for low-hanging fruit. That is easy to practice this process with. So what I tell my clients, we don't want to go for the 10, 10, 10, because, we really want to wait and get good at this before we start taking on our most valuable prospective relationships. But maybe somebody is a, 5 or 6 in ability to help you, but they're an 8 or 9 in willingness to help you and an 8 or 9 in your ability to help them. That's the person to try first. And this is what I'm going to suggest you do with them. First thing, since you're probably going to know them well and they know you well because of that willingness score, you're going to reach out to them and say something like, hey, a coach I know suggested that I really take my business relationships seriously, that I'm losing a lot of value taking you for granted. And so I've gone through and I've picked that group of folks I know that I think the most of, that I respect the most, and where I think we can help each other the most. And you're one of those people. Well, what a nice way to start a conversation, huh? Remember, no agenda, no transaction. I'm not looking for a job. I'm not looking for a referral. I'm trying to make the most of my relationships. You're one of those people that I think has one of the greatest potentials for helping each other. Okay. So they're listening. There's nothing to cause them to shut down or get defensive. Networking does that because there's a 1-0 yes or no answer out there somewhere, and people get real uncomfortable with that. Plus, you get uncomfortable knowing that, and it's often a 1-down position when you make that phone call looking for a job. How many of y'all experience that? Show of hands. Only me? Actually, I've never looked for a job, but that's another issue. Personality flaw and a personality strength all at the same time. So you're going to say to them, I've been given a process to follow that I'm learning how to do. Would you be willing for me to go through this with you and then get feedback from you on how it feels, what you think of it? Remember, this is a beta test. You want a safe place to practice this process so you can relax and just go through it and then get feedback from somebody that is the type of person you would do this with. Okay, you're setting up a beta test. And if they say they will, then say, okay, let's set up a meeting to explore the possibility of our helping each other in the future. Will you do that? Sure. Okay. Next step is you set up a meeting, always at least face-to-face. Nowadays, the potential to build relationships with people from across the world in industries you may never have done business with is amazing. But right now, these are people you know. Some of them are geographically disparate, If you can meet in person, I wouldn't do it in the beginning because you really aren't sure if that relationship's worth driving across town for and meeting with a person. In the beginning, do it through Zoom, but definitely be face-to-face. Set up a meeting for that purpose. Don't just go into the conversation. Plan about 45 minutes for the meeting. Questions so far? Fairly simple, but remember, now you've got this awesome place, a person of some prospective value to you, but very willing, and your ability to help them strong. You're going to sit down with them and they said, yeah, I want to experience this with you and give you feedback. No pressure. So you have the meeting and here's how it goes. You follow a little meeting guide. Okay. You say hi, you have your moment or two of small talk, and then you say, okay, I've got a structure I'd like to follow that I think will help us make the most of our time. So would you be willing to just let me guide us through this? So you remember, you're getting an agreement up front. Agreements are so critical in everything to say, okay, they're going to sit back and just follow, right? Now, step one, ask them to tell you their career story. Give me the short version of your career story. Where did you start? What have you been through? What are you doing now? And then look ahead a little bit and tell me where you would like to be going in the future. And then you sit back and listen. And you have a pad of paper. And as you listen, little things that might be in common, or a person you might know that could help them, or a book you've read that could help them, just you jot little notes down while they go through their story. And remember, you haven't asked them for anything other than this person to give you feedback. But ultimately, when you're doing this, pre-staged, you haven't asked them for anything. You're listening to them tell you their story. And then when they're done, you'll offer up the things that you wrote down on paper. Hey, man, that's awesome. Well, I read a book one time about this, and, that might really give you some guidance as you look for that. And I know a person in that industry you might want to meet with. Or here's a piece of feedback I have, because when I did something like that, this is what worked for me. So far, you're halfway through the meeting. You flattered them, complimented them on their value and the way you perceive them. You've listened to their story and you've helped them in whatever ways you can. Giving, giving, giving. Now, you're at this inflection point in that interaction. What's likely to happen next, even before you say anything? Come on.
Tell me your story.
Thank you. Right? In the majority of cases, they'll ask you, oh, awesome. Thank you so much for that. Tell me about you. So you still haven't asked for anything. They're asking for you now to tell them about you. And you do the same thing. Where you started, what you've been through, what you're up to now. If you're looking for a job, whether you have one or don't at the moment, that's the first time you mention anything about that. Okay? This is not networking. However, one little tiny part of it within the bigger relationship is networking. You're taking the networking nugget and you're expanding it out massively in value. But now, when you mention that you're looking for a job, they're interested. You've helped them. You've got this bond together. You've met for the purpose of trying to help each other. So that's the best time to raise the subject that you're in search. And then you talk about where you're headed and where you'd like to see your career go, not just your next job, but even long-term. What are your dreams? And at that point, what are they likely to do? Because you set the example. Come on. Y'all
Offer up insight and advice that they may have.
Yep, and introductions. Now they're going to fall right into, without you asking them for anything. You didn't ask them to help you find a job. You didn't ask for a darn thing. but they're likely to offer up to you whatever thoughts they might have following in kind with what you did. Okay. So that's how the meeting runs. Then you say, this is really awesome. Let me go back and think about all this and I'll get in touch with you soon. So that's the meeting. It's fun. There's no pressure. There's no asks. You're learning about somebody and industries. And I mean, it's just fun. You're building a bond with somebody. Just think, if you got to do this at least once a week as part of your career from now on, how much fun that would be, how much enjoyment it would add to your life. Just knowing there's all these people out there you've done that with who are now thinking about you. We'll get to that in a second. So you go back to your spreadsheet now with real current data, not just estimates based on, the best you can think of at the time. And you reevaluate that person, you rescore them based on what you now know to be the reality. And if the score is as high or higher, you make a decision what you want to invest in the future in maintaining that relationship. Because remember, if you're going to go to all that trouble, you've just built the foundation. I say all that trouble to go through that effort and invest that energy into it. If you don't take action to maintain the ongoing flow of that relationship, you've wasted it. Okay. If you're not going to keep taking care of the relationship in the future, then you might as well just stick to networking. Okay. So now you send them an email, thanking them for the meeting, telling them how much you enjoyed it, and proposing to them, I think we ought to stay connected to each other in the future so we can keep exploring possibilities of helping each other. What do you think? My suggestion is every month, quarter, 6 months, yearly, whatever you think. Remember, you've got to be willing to decide based on how much value you really think is there. It might just be, I'm going to send you an email once a year and just see how you're doing, because it may not have been as valuable as you thought. And then you put a note in your calendar, a recurring event, say 6 months out. Follow up with Bill. When you open up that event, you got a notes field in Outlook or anything. You type a few notes about that meeting and maybe any possible things in the future, the date you met, and then you save it. And you forget about it until 6 months comes, and then boom, reach out to Bill. You open it up, you look at the notes, you make a call to Bill. Remember, you're now on the call basis. And you say, hey, it's been 6 months. Let's set up a 30-minute in my Zoom and catch up with each other. They're already expecting it. They're waiting for it. Matter of fact, when you do that, they're thinking, wow, this person said 6 months, and 6 months later, they really did it. How many people do that? Okay, just there, you scored a point, especially if that person may be senior to you or a high-level prospective client, and you just demonstrated you had an opportunity to perform. And so from now on, for the rest of your career in your calendar, every 6 months, ding, reach out to Bill, have a chat, see what's going on in each other's lives, put each other in your minds. So for a while, things are going by and you're thinking of the other person. And who knows, any one of those phone calls, you never know. I mean, an amazing opportunity might present itself. And each time you go down your list, ultimately, you do that with like about two people who are high willingness and lower in ability till you get really comfortable with it. And then you hit the top of the list. And you start doing that with each person. If you're in search, more frequently. If you're employed happily, just periodically. And then every time you meet with somebody, you put that thing out in the calendar like a seed that you're going to water, and it's going to keep growing and flourishing over the years. And then ultimately you may have 20, 30, 50 of those out there. any one of which might call you one day and say, hey, we met a few months ago and I just had this thing come across my desk. I mean, you're not even thinking about it. You're working, doing your job, and emails and calls will come in right and left. I've been doing this now myself. I developed this for me in my business. I've been doing it for about 10 years, and it's incredible. Another quick tip. I know we're at the top of the hour. Well, no, matter of fact, there's too many. There's so much I can give you. We can spend another while on this. I'm going to hit pause there and encourage you to sign up for my group. And I'll talk to you about that in just a second. This is, by the way, one of the tools I use for internal social capital when you're employed and driving your career inside your company. All right. So every time I speak, I make 3 offers. You can book a complimentary individual coaching session if you'd like to work with me to do this or anything else you're trying to accomplish in your career. You can book me to speak on this or other topics at other groups you're part of, or just get on my email list for a very rare piece of content I may send out, or an invitation to a talk, because I'm kind of lazy, so you won't be getting bombarded by emails. Or number 4, what I'm offering just to you, which is tell me you're interested in joining a group like that. And if I get enough interest over the next month or so, I'll create a group and let you in. It will cost some money, but not a lot up front, because I'm just building this and y'all are going to be my beta. So you're going to get a chance to go through this pretty inexpensively, but we can talk about the details. So what I want you to do when you text the word wealth to 33777, it will respond to you and it will offer you A, B, and C on the list. Just add the word group. You can put A, any combination of these, and then just put group also, B, C, group. And then when I get that notification, I'll follow up with you on whichever one of those offers that you're asking for. I'll at least put you on my email list if you pick C. Does that make sense? Any questions about the offer and the follow-up? Okay, good. To the extent that I'm allowed another couple of minutes, I'll take a question or two, and then after that, I'll bid you all farewell for the day.
We're down to just 1 minute left. I think perhaps even a little bit less than that.
Okay.
I do want to jump in and just thank you, Kim, for your sharing some tools and techniques to organize some of that, and they speak right into tools and techniques that we tend to use, being spreadsheets and maybe some simple ratios and averages and things like that makes it pretty easy to use. So thank you very much for that. Thanks for sharing your insights. And I think we had a couple really good questions there that helped you kind of go a little bit deeper with the group today. So I encourage anyone that is so inclined, please go ahead and reach out to Kim so you can further connect and see what you can make out of that relationship. I think it could end up being fruitful for both of you.